Hello, everyone. Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is Socrates Rosenfeld, co-founder and CEO of Jane Technologies. Yeah, so thanks again for your flexibility there. It was a back-to-back week with recordings, man, which is good for the podcast, you know. So
that's a great sign, and I guess flexibility is the name of the game this year. You know.
hey, that is the name of the game, absolutely, man, in every aspect of life, right?
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Stay
So
flexible.
you mentioned you're in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, Santa Cruz, California. It's not a bad place to be, especially during these times.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure the weather's beautiful today also.
It is. Where are you based, Kevin?
So I'm in Dallas, Texas, and
Right on.
over the past week or so, it's really starting to cool down. So we're like in the mid 80s right now, which is nice, you know,
Perfect.
compared to that Texas heat that we see in the summer.
I used to live in Texas. I lived right outside of Fort Hood, Texas. I went to Dallas and bought a motorcycle back in the day when I got back from Iraq. And I will never forget how fast people drove in Dallas, just like on the highways, just crazy, big trucks, big cars.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was my one foray into Dallas, but I loved my time in Texas, man.
yeah. No, what kind of bike was it?
It was a 1976 BMW R90, like an old bike, and I really nice guy from Dallas was so kind to be like, I've kept this all my life, and you know, I'm gonna sell it, and you seem like a guy that will appreciate it, and I really did. Now another person has it up in Boston where I left it.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's cool, man. That sounds like a really nice bike. And you're right about the traffic. It's like there's science to it. Like these cars, they don't slow down. So like if you're trying to merge lanes or cross over, or you're just kind of going with the flow,
Yeah, man.
slowing down, you know.
Survival of the fittest.
That's right. That's right. Speaking of survival of the fittest, so before we get into to your company, and for those listening, we have Socrates Rosenfeld on. He's the co-founder and CEO of Jane Technologies. Jane Technologies is the industry's first complete online marketplace, which provides consumers a simple and secure shopping experience for basically all things cannabis. But before we get into that, and Socrates, I want to hear more about your company. Let's first get a sense of your background, which is really interesting, in my opinion. You served in the military, served in the U.S. Army as an Apache helicopter pilot in 2011. So first of all, thanks for your service. But I want to hear more about your background and, you know, kind of how you got into cannabis.
Yeah, man. So I actually never tried cannabis ever in my life. I remember being like, I don't know, maybe in elementary school in the DARE program, and there was a police officer, and he said, if you smoke a joint, you know, you're a bad person. And I was like, okay, well that solves it for me. I won't smoke marijuana. And I went to West Point. I was an athlete. I went to West Point in college, and then I graduated, was in the Army. I got out in 2011, went back home to Boston. I had deployed um, to Iraq in 2009. I was a company commander, and I was a pilot. So I really never faced what I thought to be, you know, traumatic stress. I was always kind of removed from that. It was a stressful time to be a pilot in combat, but certainly I thought, you know, you had to suffer from some significant experience to need some help when you transition back to the civilian world. And I was wrong. You know, I got out, I went back to Boston. I got into MIT for grad school. So, you know, on the surface, here I was kind of transitioning A-OK. But deep down, I found it challenging to really kind of find my balance, I'll say, to be able to kind of slow things down.
So at that point, before you found cannabis, were there any other like alternative remedies that you were looking for? Maybe prescription medicine, from the pharmaceutical companies, or any
Yeah,
holistic, you know?
great question. Fortunately, my mom grew up in Indonesia, and she's really kind of more on the homeopathic piece. So I didn't really, I was never really kind of thinking, oh, I need to go and get some medication. But I tried to work out as hard as I possibly could. I tried to distract myself with achievements to, what's the next shiny badge I can go and get. I uh, I didn't realize this at the time, but like I was extremely angry, um, and that's how I dealt with it. And so one day, my brother, a close friend, who ended up being a founder of the company, my wife, with them, I consumed cannabis, and I found my balance again.
Hmm.
And I wasn't ever officially diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. I'm sure I've had it, and I'm working on it, like most of us walking around these days. But from that point on, I really found this ability to connect with myself again. And the more veterans I talked to, the more I heard their stories very similar. And I said, you know what? This is something that's I don't believe that police officer that was talking to me back in elementary school. This is something, actually, it doesn't make you a bad person. It actually makes you a whole person, in my opinion, for me at least, and filled in kind of places where I had been missing for a very long time. So I shifted out to California, graduated from MIT, loved technology, shifted out to Silicon Valley, started studying tech companies, and then saw the opportunity where, as a consumer and a medical patient in California, I was able, in every other part of my life, I was able to use digital tools to make myself the expert or find the best price or get the most convenient flight, right? And in cannabis in California, back in 2014, 2015 at the time, it was like we were in the dark ages. I didn't know if I was getting the right product or price, et cetera. So my founding team and I, we decided to go and see if we could solve that problem. Number one, to serve a kind of personal need. But number two, as this thing has evolved, we've realized that digital capabilities and empowering small businesses or retail businesses, big and small, with digital capabilities helps advance and move this industry forward as a whole. And we love our role in that. And, we take that very seriously. So now we provide e-commerce technology, analytics, automation for brands, for retailers. Now, I think 1,600 operators across 32 state markets. And it's been quite the run now for about 3.5 years, man. So that's how I got involved in the space. And I think it's woven into the fabric of what Jane is it's not just a tech company seeing an opportunity in this industry, but seeing an opportunity to help and move this industry forward, hopefully in the right direction.
Hmm. There's so many things that you said there that I just admire in terms of what you and the company Jane Technologies is bringing to the table. The first, starting with you, is your passion and overall mission to bring legitimacy and safe access to cannabis, right? And that's something that is a core component of what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is just bring legitimacy and remove the overall stigma that's attached to the plant. Because to your point earlier, there is so much benefit. There's so many benefits when it comes to the medicinal side, but then also the industrial hemp side. And the fact that you were able to turn to cannabis, when you were going through those things post Iraq, right, speaks volumes. I mean, you're a true testament to that.
That's I appreciate that very much, and I respect, Kevin, what you're doing, because you're doing exactly what I'm doing, and I think what I see this industry is built upon largely. There's some that aren't, but the large majority of people involved in this industry, whether it's through media, whether it's through technology, whether it's through creating their own brands, there's a connection there to the plant.
Hmm.
There's something more than just, oh, this is another thing that we can sell, right? And I think for us not to lose that as an industry is extremely important, because it is special. If you talk to people about cannabis, it's almost like talking to people about music. You know, when you ever talked about someone who's very passionate about music, or have been to a concert or heard a song or a band at a time in their life that was meaningful, the same kind of thing happens in cannabis. And so, yeah, man, I agree. I think this industry is serving as an opportunity for people to pursue their passion. And I think if we don't lose that as an industry, we got a bright future ahead of ourselves.
Sure. No, and I completely agree with that analogy when it comes to, or that comparison of music, because all walks of life touch this plant, right?
Yeah.
All walks of life, whether you use it, whether you have it, whether you grow it, because there's material goods that can be made out of it. Lot more so back then, obviously before federal regulation. But you know, you're absolutely right. And so another challenge I think with the industry is just, you know, getting rid of that snake oil and that fraud that's occurring, you know, where people are just trying to make a quick buck, and really just start to promote and you know, help the people that are really legitimate and passionate about helping, you know.
That's it, man. And at Jane, you know, we take that from our standpoint. How do we create the opportunity for that to emerge, where trust and transparency and honesty can surface? And so one of the most exciting features that we rolled out just recently is now verified product reviews. You know, when you go on Airbnb and you're deciding what place to stay, it's not Airbnb telling you, hey, this is a really cool place. It's the people who have actually stayed there with dogs or with children, or who is there for business and needed strong Wi-Fi. All those little nuances that are so enriching and create really a transparent, honest community. That's what we've now brought to Jane. And now we provide, you know, close to now 1 million verified reviews. We just rolled this feature out a couple months ago, where now people can go onto a Jane powered menu, whether that's on iHeartJane.com or through their favorite dispensary retailer local to them. And they can now start seeing product information from the brand's mouth directly, but also from the mouths of people who have actually consumed that product,
Right.
verified. So I think it's, you know, cannabis is rooted in community. I think to be able to bring that into the digital world is extremely important as we go and progress this industry for the future.
Absolutely. I mean, even outside of the cannabis industry, we've seen that word of mouth and, you know, peer-to-peer reviews are super important, because people tend to, you know, follow or mimic what their trusted community it does, right? So
Bingo.
it's great that you're doing that. Yeah. So let's take a step back and let's actually talk about, you know, I Heart Jane, or Jane Technologies at a high level. So why don't you go ahead and explain what the company is and what your mission is?
Sure. So, very simply put, our company provides powerful technology to operators in this industry. Our core competency is the ability to automate e-commerce. So essentially what that means is we have the ability to integrate into existing systems at a store and essentially extract all those products sitting on the physical retail store shelf or a delivery depot, and replicate that onto an online platform that can live on a dispensary's website, on a brand's website, or on iHeartJane.com. And so now go ahead.
And that's an automated process when you're
Yeah,
extracting that inventory from a particular dispensary. That's all automated.
exactly. So I'm gonna take a step back, Kevin, and kind of give you why I think that's really important in just the general ecosystem of the future of e-commerce. And what I usually share is, you know, we've been now living under this paradigm since the late 90s of online commerce having to be a direct to consumer experience. The best company at that is Amazon. They started with books and they've moved into pretty much every other corner of our world. They're going to come to for groceries. They are already now.
Except cannabis. Not yet.
Yeah, right, right. And really what Amazon has now trained the consumer to do is, hey, I'm going to go on Amazon and I'm going to order something, and it's going to get shipped directly to me. And it's really convenient and wonderful, and it's changed the world forever. But at the same time, it does what's known as disintermediation of retail, meaning if I order something from Amazon, that product's probably sitting close to me, right? Somewhere in the Bay Area in California or Santa Cruz. And now I haven't supported my local community retailer, and I put that dollar to the hands of one entity, and that is Amazon. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum, wonderful companies like Shopify, WooCommerce, Square, et cetera, where they are providing a direct-to-consumer enablement tool, but really for, I will say, sellers of non-sophisticated SKU counts. So you and I, we sell, I don't know, dog beds for whatever reason. Kevin, I see a dog behind you walking around. What's his name or her name?
Toby.
Toby, right? Toby's chilling. We sell Toby's dog beds. We got a Wix website. We got like 4 colors, 5 sizes. We got, you know, stuff in your garage. We can mail that direct to consumer. Man, we're happy as clams with Shopify, right? We love it. Or WooCommerce. This is great. But, you know, GTI can't run on Shopify. Walmart and Home Depot and J. Crew and Macy's and Sears, Planet 13, right? All these retailers, physical retailers, they compete directly against Amazon. They can't really use the tool of Shopify because that's serving different kinds of sellers. And so historically, what's been left for them is really either crappy software, clunky that doesn't work because it can't accommodate the sophistication, or they're relegated to having build it themselves. And if you've ever worked in retail, to build a retail shop and also build a software company is almost impossible, unless you are the size of Walmart, and they're still figuring it out. Right. And so what we've done, and this is sorry for a very long-winded answer, but essentially what we are doing, improving here in the cannabis industry, is let us give you the Shopify-like experience, full automation, customization, etc. But let's do it for your store that has 1,000 SKUs that, you know, do 500 online orders in a day, where it's very complicated and high volume and a lot of turnover. Let us build that for you. And that's what we've done. And it's been really just a wonderful experience, because I truly think the technology coming out of the cannabis industry, particularly retail technology, CRM, analytics, those kinds of things, man, we're already talking to some retail verticals outside of cannabis, and they're like, how are you guys doing this? We would love to have this too. So I think, you know, what we're seeing in the cannabis industry today is perhaps what we will be seeing in other retail verticals tomorrow, which is really exciting. So this is what we provide. Automated e-commerce for dispensaries. We now have the ability for e-commerce now. We call it indirect to consumer for brands. And for the consumer now, what that means is they can shop with trust. They can go to their favorite dispensaries website. They can go to their favorite brands website. They can come to iHeartJane.com and know that every single product they're looking at is in stock. It is the exact right product, has the right reviews tagged to that, you know, the right descriptions directly from the brands. And we're creating a digital online experience that I think not only rivals shopping for other products outside of cannabis, but perhaps one day could be even better than that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fascinating what you guys are doing. It sounds really revolutionary. When we're talking about this innovative retail technology, and you mentioned that even verticals outside of the cannabis industry are interested, is that something that you think Jane Technologies may look to in the future as it looks to expand their business model?
It's a great question, and something that we ask ourselves and others ask ourselves. Our focus in our 100% of our focus is here in the cannabis industry, because of what we talked about earlier, Kevin, is that if we can get this right today, man, that sets precedent for some wonderful things to occur for this industry in the future. And that's really where our focus is going to be. Way down the road, we're talking way down the road, man. Absolutely. I think it would be pretty cool either to inspire other companies to take this to other retailers, for us to move into that and maybe empower that behavior. But for the near term, certainly our focus is here in cannabis, just because, it's a mission that has yet to be accomplished. And we intend on accomplishing that mission here for the next few years.
Yep. Well, speaking of looking to the future, a lot of what's been echoed on this podcast when we talk about the future of cannabis is always related to the federal regulations and how eventually, cannabis will be removed off the schedule listing and it'll be federally legal for adult use. But outside of that, that perspective, where do you see the future of cannabis retail? And
Oh man, I love it. How much time do we have? Because we could rap about this all day, Kevin.
we got time. We got time. Priest.
um, so, and I've used this metaphor before, and we kind of touched upon it, but I think cannabis is really like music, and where you and I could listen to the same Jimi Hendrix song, and you could feel really excited, and I could feel really like melancholy, perhaps. I don't know. Right? Well, same thing. You could consume a certain strain or product, and I could consume it, and man, we could have two completely different reactions to that. So I think first and foremost, you're going to see ultimate curation, ultimate personalization, to where you're going to come to a dispensary's menu, and that menu at that dispensary will look very different and be merchandised very differently and personalized extremely custom to you, Kevin. And then when I go to that same dispensary's menu online, it perhaps looks very different because I have an affinity for different taste profiles, effects, etc. So I
Right.
think that's a yes.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I've had Dr. Zach Hildebrand on, and he's doing a lot of research at the University of Texas in UTA in here in Texas. And what they are doing is his viewpoint is we want to get to a point where we understand the cannabinoids so well, not just the strain, but the cannabinoids and the terpene profile, the flavonoids, because all those intercept with our endocannabinoid system, right? And they work together. So do you see kind of that knowledge also, and that being taken into account for the cannabinoids like CBD, CBG, CBN?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it all goes back to trusted, verified, accurate, reliable information. That's how Dr. Hillerbrand can go and create these studies, right? And I think as a digital company, we see a lot of other companies, not necessarily in cannabis, though there are here, but others who have overlooked the importance of reliable, accurate information. Because if you can capture that correctly, man, what that does for medical research, what that does for personalization for the consumer, what that does for the retailer to understand what exact products to be carrying, perhaps. Yeah, man, I think that is the future. You almost can get, at a, I think, more realistic level, carrying the exact right products for Kevin at a certain dispensary or delivery depot. That will happen. But maybe even down the road, product manufacturers being able to manufacture specific combinations of cannabinoids and terpenes to you to meet your specific needs down to the kind of individual cellular level. I think it would be pretty neat. Why couldn't that happen? But I think for the future of what retail will look like, I think you're going to see a lot more real time, just in time connectivity across the entire value chain. Meaning, you take a product off a store shelf, Kevin, and that now lets the retailer know, oh, I got to order maybe one more, which lets the distributor know, which lets the manufacturer know, and so on and so forth. I think that would be pretty neat, and something, again, if you can solve for it today and get it right, what that sets up in terms of kind of real-time integration, automation, could get very interesting. As now that product will be stocked on the store shelf at the exact right time. I think would be pretty cool. So I think we're still really in the early onsets of what this industry will look like from a retail perspective. Do I think you'll ever be able to mail a an ounce of cannabis, from California in the mail to Boston? I don't think so, at least not in the near term. And so what that now creates is an opportunity for hyper localization in terms of commerce, where can we provide the same level of convenience as an Amazon, except unlike Amazon disintermediating local retail, can we push that value back down to the local consumers? Be pretty cool if we could pull that off, which I
Yeah.
think we can.
Yeah, you threw a lot out there, and I mean it's so interesting to hear you talk about like that real time automation and how that's kind of the ultimate goal, where you're not having to look to see what inventory you have to restock, or
Right.
or it's just kind of going. So that for sure is something I can see happening in the future, and I'm sure that Jane Technologies will be positioned well at that point to be one of the first to do it. Another thing that I think about when we're talking about technology and integrating all these different things to make a better user experience, right? Is
Yep.
think about like virtual reality technology. And I worked in the airline industry briefly for 2 years, and they were talking about like trying to intrigue travel and drive purchases for travel using a virtual reality experience. So for instance, you're thinking about going to the beach in Hawaii, right? You put
Right.
on, you see them, but then also the added element, and I don't know what technology this would be called, but the scent profile, right? So actually dispersing smells of the beach or of that particular country or place that you want to visit to entice you more. So I could totally see that being applied in the cannabis industry, especially with brick and mortars kind of being at risk with COVID and the pandemic and more people going online, right? So what are your thoughts on like smell profiles and VR or AR technology, excuse me, VR technology when it comes to cannabis?
Hey man, as a fan of cannabis, the ability to smell the terpenes off a kosher kush or a sour diesel or something like that. Oh man, and to be able to be like perhaps sitting in, I don't know, Iowa, and be able to kind of get as close to that as possible. I think it'd be pretty damn cool, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. Are we close? I don't know. I don't think so. But you know, that's some. I love it. I just there's a show. I don't know if you heard Black Mirror stuff. It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like how crazy will this get? I think, and I'm speaking as someone in technology. You know, that in-store consultation still can never be, or not in store, I should say, that human to human connection will never, that physical, right? We can't ever replace that. But I think what you're hitting on is extremely important. Is can we get as close to that experience as possible to maybe get you to buy that plane ticket to Hawaii so that you can go and actually experience the real thing, right? It's not to
right.
replace that. And I think that would be pretty cool if you could be like, all right, hey, let me smell these things before I ever get to the store. I think it would be pretty fun. I still think though there will still be an element of someone new to the cannabis industry who've never tried cannabis,
Right.
wanting to get into the store, wanting to talk to someone, but second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth times that person shops, yeah, man, they're gonna put on the smellometer and smell-o-vision and the Google glasses and enjoy themselves. I think that'd be pretty neat.
Your brain just working as that entrepreneur spirit of yours. You're already thinking about sales cycle and how many times consumer will purchase before they are. So yeah, you're an entrepreneur at heart, Socrates. I love it, man. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks, dude. I was like, with professional sports now or concerts, is the future. Hopefully this pandemic is not in perpetuity forever here, but will there come a point in time where you can go to Fenway Park virtually, buy a virtual ticket, put your glasses on, smell the hot dog, smell it, and you're kind of in the game, but you're not actually physically there. Yeah, man, that's borderline Black Mirror stuff, but very interesting prospect to think about.
Very interesting, man. Yeah, even when I think about, like, I'm in the social media space, I'm in social media marketing, and so when I saw that episode of Black Mirror when they're talking about the future of social media and how it basically serves as a digital currency, right? Your
Right, right.
interactions are a digital currency, and I think that's already happening in China, or in some places in China, where you do have a social credit score, basically, of your interactions, and people rate you on what you're doing. So it's really crazy where we're going to go on this wild ride, but it's fun at the same time, because we're living through it, which is pretty unique for our generations and the generations currently living. So
Yeah, I think too. Not to get on a tangent, but these technology companies. I'll just say companies in general. Some consciousness there. I think in terms of, hey, what are we putting out there to the world? Is this what effects does this have on human life or life itself? I think to blindly and not pay attention to that and just be like, hey man, I'm building this in a vacuum, um, I think is short-sighted and perhaps, you know, not the right, we could be creating some things that perhaps don't have the right effects without consciousness in this present moment. And kind of bringing it back to what we were seeing in cannabis, there's a lot of opportunity here and a lot of opportunity to take some shortcuts and take advantage of the growth that's occurring here in this industry. But again, what we build today will have reverberating effects on what the future of this industry looks like decades from now. And so let's make sure we get it right and think things through, so we don't end up like a Black Mirror situation, perhaps.
right, and it seems like we're on the right path. I mean, with the more legitimacy, going back to that word being brought into this industry, there's more outside players that are coming into the space that wouldn't have before, right? And they're bringing a lot of great value from their various backgrounds, whether it be in traditional business or various industries or finance or what have you, accounting, marketing. But it's just a matter of time, for
I agree. And there's a cannabis pioneer, I'll say, Steve D'Angelo. I don't know if you've heard of Steve D'Angelo, but he has a great, he was saying this 10, 15 years ago of, there was a lot of resistance, particularly in the medical market in California, against corporations. And for obvious reasons, I think there's a lot of distrust in, are you going to treat this industry with respect and reverence? Are you going to understand that this plant is a medicine at the end of the day and not a pair of sneakers? Um, but at the same time, exactly like you were saying, Kevin, to not invite those individuals or those entities into this space, and we need them. We need their capital. We need their efficiencies. We need their marketing. We need the eyeballs on here. But can we work in harmony with one another? I think that's extremely important. I think exactly like what we're seeing is, for the most part, that is working out. I think some states or geographies are course correcting in terms of, perhaps overlooking social equity, perhaps overlooking certain medical needs. Some states aren't allowing anxiety as a medical effect for cannabis. So I think slowly we're starting to find that harmony there of saying, okay, hey, corporations, come on in, but at the same time, let us teach you a little bit about what this plant is and what this represents for a lot of people.
hmm And related to the big corporations and even the large banks, um, because Jane Technologies works with so many different point of sale systems, um, have you run into any challenges or issues working with any of those providers? And because, of course, cannabis, right, and the Safe Banking Act hasn't been passed yet, so there is some discrepancies when it comes to banking laws in cannabis. So have you seen that on the Jane Technologies side?
I'll be honest. Are you asking about challenges on for Jane in banking?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, man. And we are a software company at the end of the day, and we've been very thoughtful of how we do what we do, because we want to respect obviously regulations, and fortunately for us, recently we haven't had issues, because I think now people are starting to understand, number one, getting a lot more educated on the cannabis industry, and number two, starting to get a lot more educated on Jane Technologies and what we do. But 5 years ago, yeah, and the moment you mention cannabis, it's like, hey, meeting's over. Sorry, you have to go. And I think it's recently with this pandemic, everything was shut down. One of the few things that was deemed essential by state governments was cannabis. And I think moving forward, right, we are preparing ourselves for perhaps an economic, I don't want to say recession, but what's going to happen here? Businesses are going to take time to get back online. People are figuring things out. Cannabis retail is through the roof. From a tax revenue generation standpoint, very appealing for some state governments, right? You see Arizona on the docket to legalize. New Jersey was pushed pressure on New York. Pennsylvania, the governors explicitly said, hey, let's go and turn adult use. One day I would love to see how Texas plays in this cannabis industry. It'll make it very Texas. Infused barbecue sauce, man. I can't wait.
So cannabis infused brisket. Oh man.
Oh, come on, dude. That would be, I would take a special trip down to Dallas just for that, man. That'd be phenomenal. Um, so long story short, we have I think some exciting things ahead, I'll say.
Right. No, without a doubt. Just like you mentioned, all these states that are up for docket in November, they're voting for adult use. Arizona, New Jersey, they're going to put pressure on those neighboring states. And
Oh yeah.
if it's not the federal government that flips the switch, it's going to be the states that overturn the federal regulation, right?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And what got us out of prohibition almost 100 years ago, out of the Great Depression. You got it, man. Yeah,
right.
you're a student of history too. Could we be lining ourselves up for a prohibition 2.0 to say, wow, hey, what kept us from going into a deep depression or a deep recession? Hey, maybe there is something to cannabis: job creation, tax revenue, helping people's well-being, et cetera, et cetera.
The environmental benefits of planting the hemp plant in the soil, which enriches the soil, which the plant takes in more CO2 emissions than any plant in the plant kingdom.
You got it, brother.
It seems like a no-brainer, but again, and to no one's fault. I mean, some politicians' fault, but I'm saying in terms of the education, just because of the stigma that's been attached to the plant and how we haven't been able to learn about it for so long, so.
Exactly. Patience, man. Just like it takes time for a plant to grow, it takes time for things to change. Patience, persistence, being honest, sharing our personal stories, Kevin. I think what you're doing with your podcast to educate the world, I think is wonderful. Yeah, man. And eventually the truth will surface.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I have a couple more just things I wanted to touch on. I know you're a busy man, Socrates.
Yeah.
I recently read a press release where Jane Technologies brought on the former co-COO or CEO of Whole Foods, Walter Robb,
Yeah.
as your corporate advisor. So why don't you just tell us more about, why that selection and what Walter brings to the table in terms of adding value for the company?
Yes. First and foremost, Walter, as a human being and as a leader, I respect what he and John Mackey and the rest of the Whole Foods team built. And that was a company that was able to do well by doing good. 40 years ago, when Walter was getting into the natural foods industry, you were a counterculture. You were a hippie or a kook or talking organic. What is that? What's a GMO? And again, patience, persistence, doing things the right way. He was able to build not only Whole Foods, but in parallel to that, was be able to change the world, man, and take care of communities. Create a company where people could grow authentically and become who they wanted to become, rooted in community and love, conscious capitalism, all those things. And so when I had the opportunity to bring Walter onto our team, we just took full advantage of it. And we're really grateful for it. And so what he provides for us is the eye of the retailer. He understands on the ground what retailers want, down to the local mom and pop grocer, because he owned that, all the way through a multi geography country global retail chain. Was data important? How was merchandising important? What did the staff need? All these, where was automation, integration? How did you incorporate delivery? Man, he was a pioneer in that space. And so for him to provide those insights back to us, not only as a retail expert, but also as a leader of character, I think we lucked out and really fortunate to have him and other advisors, some who we can't name on the company, but those that also have built mission-oriented, value-based companies. And, we always love to invite them into the J Network.
That's great. Yeah. It's so important for a company to have strong executive leadership, right? And team management, especially not only with the skill sets and what they bring to the table, but also their character, right? And actually wanting to do the right thing, which is so important in this industry right now. So we can both appreciate that. Yeah. So I know also that in 2019, July of 2019, Jane Technologies announced that it had raised $21 million in a Series B funding. That's the largest raise by any cannabis technology platform to date. So, Socrates, first, congratulations on that raise. But also, my question is, do y'all have any plans to go public at any point?
Thank you for that. And I think like literally the day we announced our raise, and we weren't claiming, I don't know where that came from as the largest round. I think like the day after, the week after, there was another company who raised more, and now there are other companies who have raised more, which is wonderful for the industry, I think. Hopefully we're going to be, deploying our capital in the right places. Going public, man, we're like, Jane is like, we started as this little garage band, man, this is the metaphor I'm going to use. Like five crazy dudes in a garage, just banging away, trying to find our sound. And then that grew to like, all right, we're playing like some really crappy venues, and then we get a little better. We got a little word of mouth. And so, we're not yet playing the world tour and selling out stadiums. So I would equate that's kind of IPO for us. What we're working on right now is just honing our sound, man. We want to really create something that's really never been created before. We're doing it privately now. If we can still do that publicly, but still not lose our sound, absolutely, I think that's an opportunity to pursue down the road. But right now, team and I really focused on creating the best software, building the best team of individuals and those kind of collectively working together towards a common goal. And once we master that sound, man, yeah, I think we'll be able to sell out stadiums soon enough. But we're still on the local circuit right now, man.
I love that analogy. And I mean, the fact that y'all are finding your sound and you're in a position where you have over 1,600 dispensaries that are included in your e-commerce platform that are representing 32 states. You guys are well on your way to selling out, venues, especially once you start expanding, I think globally, So,
Thanks, man. Yeah. It's it's one thing to scale. It's a whole other thing to scale sustainably. And, we're just getting started, and we want to make sure that's each next step is secure. It's foundational, and we can build and scale exponentially off that. And so, yeah, man, some exciting things ahead.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time, Socrates. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with? Maybe social media channels they can follow or websites they can visit?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I'm iHeartJane.com. If you are interested in seeing what local products are out there from the best local retailers to you, if you want to give us a shout, hit us up at info@iHeartJane.com. We always love hearing from everyone in the community, good, bad, and ugly. Our Instagram, iHeartJane, @iHeartJane_iHeartJane is there. Shout out to Leah, our marketing coordinator, who's just a true artist and really representing our voice. And to everyone in this space, whether they're patients, customers, operators, just kind of fans on the sideline, we are at in a moment in time in our country's history where I think there are a lot of things going on. And I think, like you touched upon earlier, Kevin, Republican, Democrat, Texas, California, old, young, right? Man, woman, we all love the plant. And if we can at least find some commonality in that, I think, again, we can build some wonderful things on top of that. So hopefully we're heading in the right direction. I think we are. And I think the cannabis industry will continue to lead the way.
Amen to that. Well said, Socrates. Thanks again for your time. And thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kevin.